Welcome to the 2016 State of the University presentation. Please mute or turn off your personal devices. My name is Rick Schell, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you and to welcome two very special friends of our UCF family, Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer and Mr. Charlie Gray. Buddy, Charlie. Thank you both for being here today. Also with us is our dedicated and always working chairman of our UCF Board of Trustees, Mr. Marcos Marchena. Marcos? Marcos, thank you for being here. Finally, please join me in a very special tribute to the First Lady of UCF, the ever-gracious Martha Hitt. Thank you. This year's event will begin with a question and answer period with Grant Heston posing his questions and yours, for those of you who filled out a card out in the lobby, to President Hitt. Following their conversation, we will hear from Faculty Senate Chair Keith Coons and Student Government President Chris Clementi. Grant Heston is Vice President for Communications and Marketing and has served UCF with distinction since 2007. Instrumental in advancing many important initiatives at UCF, Grant has most recently taken the lead in designing an institutional branding campaign that will define our university for years to come. President John Hitt has led UCF since March 1st, 1992, and he is responsible for the transformation of UCF into one of our nation's great metropolitan research universities. In December this year, UCF will confer its 300,000th degree, and President Hitt has conferred approximately 243,000 of those degrees. And we look forward to his 25th anniversary as the president of UCF this coming March. Gentlemen, if you'll take the stage.
We have our audio going? All right. Dr. Hitt, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Grant.
We're going to jump right into the serious stuff. It's a question that's important, and it's on everybody's mind here. Actually, I heard people talking about it beforehand, wondering if I'd ask about it. How do you feel about Brad and Angelina?
Words fail me. I just can't express my true feelings.
Well, I appreciate you being able to keep your composure. We'll try to see if we can go through this. But let me start with, how do you feel about UCF right now?
I feel very good about the university. Not that we don't have challenges to work with, but I think we're in a situation where we've got an all-time record high quality of student, an all-time record number of students. The faculty has never been stronger. And thank the Lord, we've been able to, over the last 2 years, to add significantly to the number of tenured and tenure-track faculty members due to the strong performance of the university on the performance-based funding plan that the Board of Governors and legislature put in. It's interesting that, quality works. You have a good performance led by the faculty and the staff, in all of those metrics of the performance-based funding, most of which have to do with student success. Good progress there leads to more money, which leads to a stronger faculty. Things sometimes go the way they should.
We were at a meeting recently, and somebody lauded you for your accomplishments of almost 25 years as president. Your response was interesting. You said simply, "The best is yet to come."
Oh, don't you think so?
Oh, I do.
Yeah. Well, think about all of the great things we've got going right now. The Advanced Manufacturing Research Center down in Osceola County, our progress toward getting our own teaching hospital, the downtown campus. I could go on. There's one really great project after another on and off the campus. I really feel very strongly that the best is yet to come, and I can't wait to see what all of you folks are going to come up with as the next set of challenges that we'll deal with.
Well, you mentioned downtown. That's something we talked a lot about this time last year. Where do we stand with UCF downtown?
Well, we've now met the criteria for release of the $20 million in state funding. So our good Vice President for Administration and Finance, Bill Merck, went all around the campus checking the deep cushions of all of the couches and found the $20 million that we had to get of UCF money. And then our friends in the community have come up with more than $20 million, and that frees up or allows us to access an appropriation of $20 million from the state. So we've now got $60 million and counting toward the project. I think we'll be able to raise some additional money that will help us do everything we want to do in that new facility, which I think will be truly transformational for our university and for downtown.
Mm-hmm. We talked about downtown. We have another really high-profile project right now, which is a teaching hospital at Lake Nona. Why is that important?
Well, I see Dean German sitting in the front row, and I never want to disappoint Dean German. That could be dangerous. But right now, she has an interesting problem. She's got one surgeon on her faculty at the medical college, and the reason for that singular appointment and not more is that we don't have a place for our surgeons to practice. That's a very difficult problem to deal with as dean, and it's only going to be cured, I think, when we get that teaching hospital. Then we can have the right number of surgeons, which is not one or none. That's just one example of the kind of problems that we run into in not having our own teaching hospital. I think that will, without any disrespect intended for anyone here, any member of another hospital board or staff, I think a teaching hospital inevitably increases the quality of medical care in the community that surrounds it. And I believe that'll be true at UCF as well. And again, that's from someone who has the deepest respect for what the other hospitals in the area do for us.
New York Times just this afternoon published a story online that will be in the paper tomorrow about Lake Nona Medical City and the UCF College of Medicine. What do you remember about it 10 years ago or so when it first got started?
Well, one of the things I remember is back before it really got started at all, and for those of you who know Terry Hickey, you can appreciate the experience I had in being in a helicopter with him and Sesh Thacker, and watching Terry's face as we auto-rotated around in that helicopter. And they stopped that maneuver just in time, folks, just in time. But when we first were out there, that little helicopter ride, we were looking at 7,000 acres of scrub pine and palmetto. Maybe there was an occasional cow out there too, I don't really remember that. But I looked at it, and I suppose one eye might have seen a vast emptiness. You put the other eye out there and get a little stereo vision going, and you could see real opportunity. You had a developer who wanted to do the right kind of thing, someone with a long time horizon. We were able to get the approval for the medical college through the Board of Governors. Some would remember it was a 15-to-1 vote. It would have been 16-to-1, but the chair only votes in the event of a tie, but who really counts? We were in a partnership with FIU, and both of us got our medical colleges on the same day. And then the reality sets in. You've got your approval of the Board of Governors now, but you've got to get the funding. You've got to get the commitments you've got from private individuals as well as government and corporate. Then you got to hire a dean. And luckily we hired Deborah German as the dean. She's done a remarkable job, for a real startup. She was the one and only employee of the medical college for a while. Now the good side of that was there was very little contention in the faculty meetings. But the bad side of that was that we really had to scramble to find the resources that she needed to get the job done for our initial accreditation. So I remember it from Greenfield, and when Tavistock offered 50 acres of that land, and what was it, 12.5 million. It didn't take me long to say yes.
Well, philanthropy played a big part in the College of Medicine.
Still does.
We just had a great Ignite campaign kickoff on Friday night at CFE Arena. It's a $500 million fundraising campaign. We've raised more than $275 million. You had an arena full of donors, supporters, and fans, and you closed the ceremony out inside, and it looked like you were moved when you got up there to speak. Can you talk about what you were thinking when you looked out on that sea of people who were there to support UCF?
Well, to see that turnout of great friends of the university, the leadership really of Central Florida, and to know that they were there because they had already contributed significantly to the university, and to talk with people and watch their reaction as things unfolded. It just assured me that here's another case where the best is yet to come. $275 million is a lot of money, but universities all over the country now are successfully completing $500 million and billion or even more than $1 billion campaigns. It was very reassuring to see the kind of response we're getting to the $500 million campaign we're doing. And I say that as someone who would feel with great assurance that we'll succeed here and then move on within a few years to that $1 billion campaign. And we've got to do that if we're going to really be successful. We need that private philanthropy to provide the margin of excellence between what we can reasonably expect the state to do for us, what we reasonably can expect students and their families to do for themselves. If we're going to hit real excellence, you got to get above the sum of those two. And the way you're going to do that is private philanthropy.
This room is full of folks who have supported UCF. What would you say to somebody who's supported UCF and been a donor?
Well, the first thing I'd say is thank you very much. No matter the size of your gift or the cause, if you give to UCF, you're really helping a great institution become even better. So thank you, those of you who have donated. Those of you who haven't, we'll get around to you. Don't worry, you'll have your opportunity.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, that was Friday night. Saturday night, we had a near sellout, a double overtime game against Maryland. We've made a lot of changes in athletics from this time a year ago. Where do you think athletics is headed?
Oh, I think we're on the right path in athletics, and that starts with Danny White, our Vice President and Director of Athletics, and the character of that man. He has the highest integrity, and I'm confident that he's leading us on very sound grounds of honorable compliance. So you start there. Danny's still a young man, but he has unrivaled knowledge of the coaching personnel who are out there and great resources. I brag on Danny a lot, and some people kind of smile knowing that I first ran into Danny when he's probably about 10 years old. His mom and dad or his dad was the athletics director up at the University of Maine, where Martha and I were for 4.5 years. And his dad, Kevin, is now the athletics director at Duke University. Moved there from Notre Dame, and to Notre Dame from Arizona State, to Arizona State from Tulane. He's had a great career, and I think he's reared a son who is sort of taking where he is and moving on. So with the leadership of Danny and the fine coaches, Johnny Dawkins, Scott Frost, all of the coaches he's hired and those whom he inherited, I think we're on the right path, and we'll soon get the major sports back on a winning track.
You're a student athlete.
More of a student than an athlete, I must say. And I wasn't that good a student.
How did that experience shape your view of athletics and the student athlete experience?
Well, I think playing small college ball as I did, none of us got athletic scholarships, but there were a lot of students who really cared about the outcome of our games. Athletics have a way of uniting a campus community if they're done right. You know, I think I learned something there. Another thing I learned just from the competition is that generally, when you think you've done all you can reach down and get a little more and do a little more. And I've said to friends over the years, not much that really amounts to anything has been done by quitters. And you know, if you deal with competitive athletes, there are a lot of things and there are not a lot of things, and one of those is they're not quitters. And so I think there is a value to giving a young man or woman who wants athletics the opportunity to participate at the highest level they can. And you know, here at UCF, that's everything from club sports. Some of them win national championships among the club sports, all the way up through the highest level of NCAA-sanctioned football and basketball. So I think athletics sometimes, you know, sometimes they get more attention than they really should. I don't think there's a lot of doubt about that. But they do a lot of good things for the participants and for the campus community. And if we keep the right perspective on athletics and don't let it get too overbalanced, I think they make a marvelous contribution to the campus.
Well, we solicited questions from our guests, so I'd like to read one of them now. What role do you think crowdfunding can play in a university's fundraising plan?
You know, that's something I've seen speculated about just a little bit, and my honest answer is I really don't know. But I have that sense of opportunity there, that if we can figure out the right audience for it, the right group of folks to solicit, and the right project, obviously, there might be some opportunity there to raise some serious money. How big, I don't know, you know, and what the project would look like, I don't know. You got to know whom you're asking before you know just how you're going to phrase the ask, and I'd have to yield to some people with real expert experience on that question.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I think most people know about UCF is that UCF is big. Mm-hmm. So the question I have for you, does size matter?
Well, it does. Those of you who were watching the slides saw the best illustration of that fact that I know of in the equation that came out of our strategic plan, which I think is a really visionary document. Scale times excellence equals impact. Think about what we do. We're in the impact business. That's what we do. We create an impact in the lives of others, and through their enhanced capabilities, their enhanced motivation, their enhanced vision, they create impact. Impact in improving the lives of themselves and many others. So if you just think about what it means to have a multiplier and not a plus sign between scale and excellence, you'll see just how important size is, because goodness, if you're very good at all and you're big, you can have a real impact. You can be very good, and if you're small enough, it's hard to see much impact. Now, not to say that it can't be done. We can all think of a few examples, but most of the institutions in whatever realm who are truly excellent and make that big impact are not small, they're large. And I think it's interesting, not directly pertinent to this, but if you go and look at the data from the first 4 years of the application of the performance funding metrics in Florida, the winners, and by the way, your university has won 2 out of the 4 and never finished out of the top 3, but the winners are the big universities. And we're hearing a little whining from some, I shouldn't say that, but we're hearing a little whining from some of the smaller institutions about how hard it will be for them to break through and really win anything. I hope they do. I wish everybody success, almost everybody.
You have an interesting story about when you, right before the first performance funding metrics were to come out.
I knew you'd ask that. We were at New College where Rick and I are headed later today. I think Mary Beth Ehas and Paige Borden are headed over that way as well. We've got a Board of Governors meeting. And I was admonishing the guy who chaired the committee on this, now the chairman of the board, Tom Kuntz, about the flaws in the new performance-based funding and its application. And he was patient with me for a few minutes, and he said, "John, would it make you feel any better if I told you that you were tied for first?" And I said, "What a genius plan."
Well, so size does matter, but I've heard you say when it comes to UCF that it's not always just about how big you are.
Of course not. How good you are matters a lot too. And the trick is, can you be large, good, and affordable? Large generally means there's some good access at work, and that's a value in itself. Who was it? Politico that had the phrase, UCF is a seamless pipeline for social mobility. That's a pretty good descriptor of what we do. So, I think we need to bear in mind that, size does matter, and one of the pathways to excellence can be to be big enough to have a good representation of the various fields and subfields within disciplines. If you'll think about the best programs in the country in your discipline, whatever it is, they're generally pretty good sized. Now, not invariably. There are a few programs that you can be small and still be a leader, but most of the significant programs of study, if you're talking about the very best programs within them, they're good-sized programs.
Okay. Dr. Hitt, we'll have another audience question now. This is a serious one. What do you like most about your Apple Watch?
Questions about my Apple Watch. No, I like the fact that you can access information without having to fumble around and try to surreptitiously dig out your iPhone during a meeting. Not that I'd ever do that. But no, that's it. And there's some decent apps. I'm trusting though that we'll see more. I have to confess, I probably use about 10% of the capability, and half of that use is probably looking to see what the temperature is in Madison, Wisconsin, so I can talk to our kids about it when I call them on the phone.
Well, Dr. Hitt, it would be impossible to talk about the state of the university today if we didn't talk about the state of our community and address what happened in Orlando on June 12th. Can you talk a little bit about your initial thoughts to the Pulse shooting and how the university responded?
Well, I think we were all, I know for those of you who aren't in on this part of it, Grant is part of a crisis response team that met at the Burnett House on the morning of the shooting. And we all shared a certain amount of horror, even though we were 15, 16 miles removed from it. I don't think distance matters much when you hear accounts of a brutal event like that. First thoughts I had is, well, I wonder how many of our faculty, staff, students, alumni might have been involved in the shooting as victims. And then as we began to get a little more information there, what can we do to help? One of the keys to success for a university, in my view, is that it strives to be of as well as in a community. It's not enough just to be, out here in East Orlando and have an Orlando address on our business cards and stationery. And it's not enough to go ask the mayor and others, what can you do to help us be a better university? That's important, and we get good response. But we need to ask what we can do to make Greater Orlando a better, safer place to live, to work, to play. That was, our sense right away, I think, was how can we help? And there were some interesting ways we did. The early call I made was to Mayor Dyer, realizing that his phone would be swamped with calls. But I wanted to make it clear we were thinking about these questions. But our police had not waited to hear anything from us. They had volunteered, and indeed, I believe it's the case that the bomb-sniffing dog that was used to clear surrounding areas was the UCF canine. And I know that we had victim advocates who came down and stepped in. I'm sure I'm missing others. I know the counseling staff was on duty 24 hours a day out here for a while. And, you know, we did our best to think of ways that we could be of service without getting in the way and without approaching some of the, well, I don't really want to characterize some of the folks who stepped forward to give impromptu press conferences about events and things they didn't know much about. But we didn't want to be in that category. But I am glad we were able to step forward and provide some meaningful help, not just good intentions.
Oh, in one of your first messages, you said very explicitly that the university stands with the LGBTQ community.
Absolutely. I felt very strongly that we had to assure the community, the LGBTQ community, that we understood that they were having a very difficult experience. Many of them lost friends, either to injury or death, and we wanted them to know that we had their back and would continue to. So that was indeed, Grant had the pleasure of holding an iPhone up, I think, while we provided the video. But all of that came from the hearts of the people who were in that room. And I'll tell you, we are blessed to have some really outstanding professionals, including our Chief of Police, Rich Berry, who stepped up and really made a wonderful contribution on that day.
You know, this was a tough summer, not just for Orlando, but for the country. You saw shootings of citizens, of police officers, peaceful protests, not peaceful protests. What's your perspective on what we saw this summer?
Well, I think occasionally we get into situations where there's a confluence of events, not that any one of these events, the shootings, for instance, any one of them was horrendous and might have caused a stir. But when you get a half dozen or so of them within a very short period of time, I don't care what the facts are surrounding the shootings. It almost doesn't matter at that point. You're going to have such a tremendous opportunity for misunderstanding, unfortunately, for expressions of hatred at the same time. You're going to have a problem. What we need to do, I think, as a university is to step forward to assure that our entire community understands our commitment to each student. And we take people as they are, not as we might wish they are, or someone else might want them to be. We need to assure them by stepping forward and expressing our sincere beliefs and intentions to make UCF even more inclusive and diverse. Most all of you, I expect, have heard my comment on the difference between inclusiveness and diversity. Some have questioned over the years why we didn't just say become more diverse. Well, we've got some diversity in this audience today. We would be every bit as diverse if we all hated one another, but we could never claim to be inclusive if that were the case. So we got to work as a campus, as a community, to be both more inclusive and more diverse. Diversity is great, but it's a necessary but not sufficient condition for what we need to provide, which is an atmosphere in which every student, every faculty member, every staffer can develop to his or her full potential.
Dr. You've talked about what you want to see in UCF being inclusive and diverse. On one of the slides before this gathering, we threw up some words that our research had showed people said about UCF. This is not us saying it, it's people saying that the institution is bold, modern, young, energetic, has a can-do spirit. Is that typical for what a large public research university is described? And is that something, how do you feel about those words?
Well, I feel very good about the words, and I must say I think they are good descriptors of UCF. Unfortunately, I don't think that entire list would be characteristic of a lot of larger state universities. One of the things that has marked my experience with our faculty and staff and students in more than 24 years, and it's been true the whole way, is the can-do spirit and the reluctance to be finger pointers, if you will. If you show UCF people something that needs improvement, you're not going to get a lot of, well, it's the other guy's fault. Or, gee, are you sure that that really needs improvement? Is it really important that our students graduate in a timely manner? Well, of course it is. But some places you'd get a lot of argument about that. Here you get people who get to work to analyze the problem, its causes, and then figure out how we can solve the problem or make the situation better. That's a priceless resource. And I hope that during my 24, nearly 25 years in office, we've been able to further solidify that as a key component of UCF.
Well, we have just a few minutes left, so I'd like to start a few sentences and then have you complete them. Does that sound good?
Well, it sounds like you're going to do it. We'll see whether it's any good.
Okay. All right. UCF students are
amazing.
Mm-hmm. The best commencement speaker I've seen was
Bill Clinton.
Okay. I'm proud of our faculty members because
they care.
My favorite place to eat is
Martha's Kitchen.
In 25 years, Orlando will be
even bigger and better than it is today.
Philanthropy is important because
without it, we can't be fully successful.
The secret to being married for 55 years is
choosing the right partner.
When I have free time, I like to
spend it with Martha.
There's a good theme here. There's a good theme.
Yes, 55 years in the making.
I plan to serve as president until
I'll let you know.
Okay. My last question. You meet someone who doesn't know a thing about UCF. What do you tell them?
I tell them about what a great group of students and faculty members we have. I've watched our students self-organize around problems in ways that I've just never seen elsewhere. If you think about the Limitless Solutions group, the engineering students and from other disciplines who supply hands and arms to kids who have lost them or they never developed. That was students who organized around that problem. Now they got some faculty and staff assistance along the way, but they really found the problem and organized themselves to address it. And didn't do it for any hope of getting rich. All of their plans, all of their designs, they put on the internet and made them available free to anyone who wanted to use them. Think of the group who are on the cyber defense team, 3 national championships they won. They organized and then got faculty help. There's a theme there that I hope I'm going to see more and more of, because I think it could be a really defining characteristic of an institution that's going to get tremendous recognition for the quality of its students and the educational experiences that they're prepared with.
Well, Dr. Hitt, on behalf of everybody here, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Grant, and thanks to all of you for coming.
And before our next speakers come up, we spent about 30 minutes talking about UCF. We're going to take a few minutes and show you some of UCF right now.
Thank you both for this edifying, entertaining, and indeed moving dialogue. It's been a privilege for me, and I think for you as well, to be present today. Let's give Grant and the President again another round of applause for this terrific stage innovation. Dr. Keith Coons is serving his second year as chair of the UCF Faculty Senate, where he has been a champion for shared governance between the faculty and the administration. As Faculty Senate Chair, Keith holds a seat on the UCF Board of Trustees, where he has been a strong proponent for advancing our university. In addition to his leadership role at UCF, Keith is an accomplished and internationally recognized clarinetist. Keith Coons.
President Hitt, Chairman Marchena, President Clementi, fellow faculty, staff, students, and guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I can admit to you that I am old. So old that when I watched television as a kid, the picture was in black and white. Now, there were some great shows at that time, but it was limiting. It was only black and white. When the family got an upgrade to a color television, it was a whole different world. On a color TV, you can see a rainbow, one of the most beautiful sights in creation. The eye of the human body can distinguish over 100 different colors, and every one of them is beautiful. However, if one or more colors is missing from the rainbow, then it is incomplete and its beauty is diminished. The recent shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando and other tragic events have made us all more aware of the diverse elements in our society. Here at UCF, it is more important than ever to remember the fourth goal that President Hitt established when he became president: become more inclusive and diverse. This can apply to matters of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, class, religion, political party, national origin, language, disability, body shape and size, and others. As an educational institution, we should be guided by an open culture of ideas and not allow ourselves to be taken over by harmful elements such as hate and prejudice. We have made great advances towards this goal, but we cannot claim to have reached it yet. We can do better. As we strive for more progress towards inclusion and diversity, I ask for two things. One, please have respect for all members of our university community. Great ideas can come from anyone. Two, please have appreciation for all members of our university community. When our faculty, students, and staff are more inclusive and diverse, it makes our university stronger, and we are able to provide a richer educational experience for our students. A black and white television is too limited and monochromatic. We want a more vivid experience. We want to unite all the colors to form a big, beautiful rainbow.
Thank you, Dr. Coons. Mr. Chris Clementi is the president of the Student Government Association. He has a double major in history and political science. In the 5 months that Chris has been in office, he has already distinguished himself as an outstanding advocate for student interests, and he has quickly become a respected voice on the UCF Board of Trustees. Mr. President, Chris.
Good afternoon, fellow Knights, community members, thank you for being here. The University of Central Florida's student body is composed of a variety of differences that are linked by a common purpose, opportunity. Now, over the past 4 years at this institution, this is an opportunity that I have felt and I have seen in the peers that surround me. We're able to attract students from a wide range of backgrounds because we put respect at the forefront of our words and our actions. By respecting the differences that make us who we are, we stand united. As students, we realize at the end of the day, one word defines us, and that is human. As natural and man-made disasters take place around the world, our home, Orlando, continues to be a glimmer of light in hard times. During the Pulse shooting, an act of violence that sought to divide us, we stood and faced hatred with love. We rebuilt and showed the state, the nation, and the world that Orlando is a place where love thrives. With the pain and hardship suffered by our African American community, UCF-PD, community leaders, students, faculty, staff, showed through acts of solidarity that Black lives matter. With all of this tragedy, it is easy for us to grow cynical and cold. But my faith in humanity is restored each day I step foot on this campus, each day that I get to meet with faculty, that I get to meet with staff and see my fellow students. Here I'm surrounded by people who are running towards world problems, while others are running away. Here I'm surrounded by people determined to impact something or someone for the better. Here I'm surrounded by people that fight for and continue to foster an inclusive environment. As we set off into another academic year, let us take a moment to reflect on how we got here. We have faced adversity in the past, and we will face it again, but this time stronger than the last. Romans 5 tells us that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance builds character, and character creates hope, and hope does not put us to shame. The University of Central Florida is where it is now through encouraging differences, and we will be even greater in the next 53 years by upholding that very same standard. My fellow Knights community members, thank you so much. Go Knights, and charge on.